All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 386. Son, this is bait. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
Hello.
And we have the Doge in charge, Brian Martinez, working in the background to make things happen. Tonight we are looking at an article that was sent to me by a regular listener. He's from the Night Cycle account on X, which I believe is also Night Motorcyclist, in our chat.
I like that.
Yeah, he's been through a lot. And the one of the big things that I learned from Night Motorcyclist is that the systems that up until probably 2016 or 2018 worked both ways for discrimination and things like that have been so taken over by feminists that nothing in the government works the way that it's supposed to work now. So you go through exactly the same experience that a woman could report for discrimination, and if you report it, you get punished instead. So we've got a lot of work to do in government to get things back on an even keel for both sexes. But in any case, tonight we have a subject that is an article he sent us, and it is a much darker subject than just how difficult it is to avoid being discriminated against, which is pretty dark in and of itself. But this is worse. But before we get into it, we have a not so dark super chow, and then we got to do what we got to do. So yesterday at 11:02 p.m. When I don't even know if there was a show going on at the time, but it didn't get read on the air, so I'm reading it now. Patricia Bateman sent us $5 and said, "Oh my God, look at those shoes! The subtle off-white coloring, the tasteful thickness of it. OMG, it even has a branding." And I have no idea what show that's for. So if somebody would like to provide us with context for that, it's a little confusing from the perspective of the HBR Talk crowd. But there we go.
How dare you with your shoe? How dare you?
It's going to be the lightest bit of the show the whole night. And it's not just because the mention of the shoes color.
Even though it's a quote from American Psycho, it's going to be the least dark thing in the show.
Yes, it is. So, as always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions. And as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated that provoked thoughts are fighting back, they're going to be provoked as hell tonight because we are blaming a woman for things a woman did. And we're not allowed to do that, right? So the provoked thoughts have made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, where we regularly piss off not the libs, but the feminists, which is much more dangerous. Which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And with that, we will get into the thing that we have to get into today. And when I saw this article, I knew it was going to be bad. But
it says BBC at the top, so
yeah. But the investigation that they've done here involves direct communication with the people that are involved in the situation, and it's interesting the way that they've responded to it and everything, because as I said, I posted on X, and I don't know if I said it in my opener, but this article is about a method used to get men to the Russian front that has a very familiar ring to it. We have a name for it when this is done to women, and it's something that we've heard about, a guy particularly hated by feminists and British officials, and by the way, the BBC too, having done. And he's accused of it, and if he'd been found guilty, he'd have been jailed for it. But let's see if you catch the similarity and the difference in how it's being looked at here. And we'll start by playing their video. Oh, this is not very loud.
And now look what
And I don't see a way to make it louder.
Do you recognize your passport? And now look what will happen to it. It's burning well, your Syrian passport.
So she said, "Do you recognize your passport? And now look what will happen to it. It's burning well, your Syrian passport." So there's your preview. Flames lick around the edges of Omar's passport. It's burning well, an unseen woman says in the video. Omar, a 26-year-old Syrian construction worker, had been deployed for about 9 months on the front line of Russia's war in Ukraine when the clip arrived on his phone. He knew the woman's voice. And I'm going to butcher her last name here, but it was Polina Alexandrovna. I believe this is Zarnik, maybe a Zarnik, who he says had helped him sign up to fight for Russia, promising lucrative work and Russian citizenship. But now she was angry. In a series of voice notes from Ukraine, Omar, speaking under a pseudonym for his safety, describes how he ended up trapped and terrified in a war zone. He says she had promised that if he paid her $3,000, or 2,227, that's pounds, right? I think that's pounds. She would ensure he stayed in a non-combat role. But he says he was sent into battle with just 10 days of training. 10 days of military training, guys. So he refused to pay, and she eventually responded by burning his passport. I want you to remember one of the reasons that Gen X was taught to hate the Vietnam War and the way that the military handled it was that our boys here in the United States were sent into combat with only 6 weeks of training. 42 days. He got 10. We were tricked. This woman is a con artist and a liar, says Omar. This is a social media post that she's made with these guys. They're all holding up their passports and the image, or at least the cover, not the actual ID information. Right? Frequently, she posts these images of herself with new recruits, including the Syrian group Omar traveled with. A BBC investigation has followed how Zarnik, a 40-year-old former teacher, uses a Telegram channel to lure young men, often from poor countries, into joining Russia's military. The former
Jesus
teachers,
Christ.
the former teacher's smiling video messages and upbeat posts offer 1-year contracts for, quote, military service. So the promises that she's making them, right? Russian citizenship. So they leave a country that is intensely poor, like super, super poor, and go to a nation that is less poor. They're still not a wealthy nation. And like right before this show, another video came up when I was looking for more video to play on this and didn't really find anything that described housing in the coldest city in Russia. And granted, you need small spaces to retain heat, small internal spaces to retain heat. But Dayton, Ohio, where I live, has been noted as one of the 10 worst places to live in the United States because of how cheap the housing here is. And it's true, you can get a 2-bedroom home here. 2-bedroom, usually 1.5, 2 bathrooms, often with a basement, often with a yard, for under $70,000.
What the fuck?
But you have to have 4 or 5 locks on your door in the neighborhoods where those homes are selling, right? But the home itself is, if you put a couple of normal-sized apartments together from this area, you get about the size of that home. And usually, your mortgage payment's going to be a lot lower than living in one of those apartments.
Yeah.
So it's pretty decent, right? That's what it costs to live in the equivalent of a large studio apartment that's been divided up into rooms in that city in Russia. In a building that is designed using strictly brutalist architecture. And, it's not, like I said, it's understandable in an environment that cold that the rooms would be smaller. But to have to combine the bedroom and the living room, to have a kitchen that you can barely turn around in, things like that, and have that be luxury housing, and you actually have to buy it like you buy a condo here. That's quite a difference between the two countries. I would still call Russia kind of an impoverished country if that's the way that most people there are living. But compared to Syria, it's still quite luxurious. You're not living in a tent. You're not living in a building that's bombed out.
Or a cave.
Or cave, right? And similarly, you have she's recruiting from Syria, Egypt, Yemen, Africa. So, yeah, 1-year contracts for military service, Russian citizenship, and no work on the front lines. It sounds very attractive. When they get there, they get 10 days of training and they go right straight to the front lines. And then it gets worse.
And when you read this, you have to bear in mind the various biases that the BBC has. I know the BBC wouldn't have biases. It's obliged to be unbiased and stuff. But anyone who knows anything about the BBC knows, they have a whole bunch of biases, and one of them is against Russia when it comes to the Ukraine war. So I mean, you never heard any of the stuff we told you about what Ukrainian men went through, because that's not in the BBC's interests. It's in the BBC's interests to propagandize against Russia and its government and its military, all this such. But it's also in their interests. They're also biased in favor of women. So it wouldn't make as much sense that they're levying all of this against a woman, albeit a Russian woman that's where it all comes to a head, and you're like, well, I don't know what to believe. But they are very much in favor of Syria, what with it being a Middle East and mostly Muslim nation, and so
Well,
they're
yeah, so because just being a woman does not stack higher on the um
The progressive stack.
the progressive stack exactly than being oh my god, an undocumented or an immigrant.
plus
No,
the Russian
being a simple woman is just, oh, you're just all right. Well, bitch, get back in line.
plus the woman in question is not just a white woman, but a blonde white woman. So
Oh.
there's some kind of Nazi shit going on there. So there's a fucking tesseract of opposing biases going on here. So
Yes.
you have to question everything you hear when it comes to the BBC. So
Yeah.
don't hear any of this and go, oh my god, that's because it must be true. No, don't assume any of this is true. Weigh the biases against each other. Like, what would the BBC say that is true, and what would they say that is not true? And then we're wading into this as a fucking swamp of opposing chemical reactions, none of which makes sense. But I'm
Yeah, I
just
will say though, the video that we showed at the beginning of this of the passport being burned, there's no context that makes that okay. There's not a bias out there that makes it okay to lure someone to a foreign country and then burn their passport.
Well, see, you said when you were reading the the text, you said Omar, and my brain goes immediately to
Yeah,
Iran. Omar, yes, can we burn her passport? Can we send this bitch back?
yeah,
But that's not what we're talking about. So,
no, no, but yeah, I would be all
what
for deporting her.
what
And that's the
dreams
other
may
thing, right?
come.
These guys aren't being threatened with deportation. They're being
Mhm.
threatened with not being able to leave ever.
Right. Their lives.
Right. So, like I said, it does get worse. The BBC World Service has identified nearly 500 cases where she has provided documents referred to as invitations, which allow the recipient to enter Russia to join the military. These have been for men, mainly from Syria, Egypt, and Yemen, who appear to have sent their passport details in order to enlist. But recruits and their relatives have told the BBC that she misled men into believing they would avoid combat, failed to make clear that they could not leave after a year, and threatened those who challenged her. When contacted by the BBC, she rejected the allegations. 12 families told us of young men they say were recruited by her who are now dead or
Mm.
missing.
Jesus Christ.
Yep. She frequently posts videos of herself encouraging people to serve in the Russian military. Right. So this is something else. Guys, wherever you're from, if you're listening to this, you don't owe another country your military service.
No.
Your own country shouldn't be exploiting your military service for anything but national defense to keep invaders out.
Correct.
Right? So basically, if somebody sends you a Telegram message or some other social media message, and they're promising all kinds of, look, be a mercenary in our military and you'll get all kinds of great things, never forget what they're asking you to trade for that, even if it's the most upfront and honest recruitment video that has ever existed in the history of all humankind. They're asking you to kill other men and risk being killed by other men for whatever it is they're offering you. And like, you can probably get that or its equivalent without any killing involved. All they can offer you is money and things like citizenship Um, really, that's about it. They can say they're going to offer you prestige, but you know what happens post Vietnam in every single war, right? The men that come back from the war expecting to be viewed as heroes are treated like they knew of whatever atrocities their country was committing the whole time and chose to be part of it, and are just evil villains that nobody should ever love again. So there's no prestige they can offer you. The only thing that they can offer you is money and legal statuses that you can get in other ways. Never fall for something like this.
Yeah. And it just kind of shows the nature of men and how they're just willing to lay their lives down to either even if it's under such facetious fucking terms as, oh, look at you want to see boob, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the enticement of women to but that's what it all is. That's what the fuck it all is. It's protect your women, put your life down on the line to protect your women.
Often
And then
war,
A woman who offers to give you something to travel to a foreign country.
right. It again, and right. Like it's not even your women. It's a different country's women. Just
very
come in. Go ahead.
no, finish your thought.
No. I'm done.
Yeah, war in general is very often blamed on the nature of men. It's just something about men, all men. They just like fighting wars. But imagine a population of men who is happy with their lives. They all have wives and they all have children and they all have
Mhm.
jobs they enjoy. If the government came to them saying go fight this war, never mind if some bint came to them saying hey, go and fight this war and we'll give you a fucking used car or whatever the equivalent was. She said, no,
Mhm.
a population of such men would not go to war unless they genuinely believed that their homeland was generally being threatened with invasion. They wouldn't. Wars are not fought because of male nature. Wars are fought because there is almost always this glut of men who have nothing to lose because
Mhm.
they don't have women who love them. They
Mhm.
don't have families who love them. This becomes exponentially exaggerated in countries where they have polygamy, specifically polyandry, where the richest of men can have four wives and upwards of, and that leaves 75% of the men upwards with nothing, with nothing to preserve within their own homeland. They're not just happy with their lot in life. They're not just happy with their log cabin and their family and the simple life that they have because they don't have any of that. And so, of course, they have nothing to fight for but whatever some bint tells them they have to fight for. And yeah, this isn't even a recent phenomenon that came about because of feminism. I mean, wars on this scale have been fought since ancient times,
Mhm.
since the Bronze Age and before, since the fucking Stone Age. But and you might you might put that down to just the natural way that men and women fucking operate, and maybe it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's inevitable. Um, it comes down to men who just wanted to be left alone.
Mhm.
If all you have access to is men who want to be left alone because they have all they want already, then you're not going to be able to get them to fight a war for you, um, and unless, like I said, it is for them to defend what they have to themselves. Um, Wars are fought because of men who don't want to be left alone because they have nothing of their own to fight for. wars are fought because there is always this glut of men who have nothing to fight for, and so they just fight for the sake of fighting.
Mm.
Like
Or they're
the
forced into it.
yeah, the shysters in charge are able to fight these pointless fucking wars, or indeed these wars that they think there is a point in, because they will always have a certain percentage of their population of men who will just go, well, yeah, I don't have a wife or children, I don't have a home of my own or a life of my own to fight for, so yeah, why not? I'll just believe you. That these people are bastards for some reason or whatever. So yeah, fucking blow me up. Why would I give a shit? And that's it's not male nature that leads to war. It's, if anything, it's this corruption of male nature. It's this it's taking away everything that men want. A wife and a child and a home. And once they don't have that, you have yourself a soldier. And that's not to say that there aren't any soldiers that do have those things, because there is something about men's nature that even if they do have a wife and children and a home, they will still want to fight for them through the proxy of whatever government it is purporting to be trying to save them. And this will only get worse if you refuse to leave these men alone. It will only get better if you do leave these men alone. Because if you have a nation full of men who will only defend their own homeland, then your homeland will never get invaded. This is kind of the point of America. This is kind of the point of letting everyone have their own guns. Like, no one can invade America, not even China, not even Russia, because there will always be an American hiding behind a blade of grass with a gun. Like, they don't need to be sent off to war. The country will always be safe because they have their own guns. They are ready and willing to defend their own property. With or without a government, you'll never be able to invade America as long as Americans have guns. And this would be the case with every country. It should be the case with every country. Like, it doesn't matter what governments and politicians are fucking bitching about. If everyone just had their own population of men who are willing to defend their property, there wouldn't be any fucking wars. I mean, I'm exaggerating slightly, but you know, these wars happen because private property is being taken over by these shysters who don't consider anything to be private property. It's their property. And they're going to use it to fight pointless international wars over pointless international bullshit. Like the fucking southeast territory of Ukraine, or like Greenland. I mean, I don't think the same thing's going to happen in Greenland, but if we were in a slightly worse state of affairs, maybe it would. Maybe fucking thousands of these men with nothing better to do would be sent into Greenland to fucking fight over the ice or some shit.
The worst outcome would be if nations started sending their militaries, because that's those guys don't get a choice once they're in the military. They get sent where their country sends them, and they get punished if they say no. At that point, just like any military service, once you sign up, you belong to the government, and wherever they send you, you go. But I don't think that's going to happen. So, in this instance, though, we do have a relevant chat from Meredith G. Meredith G gave us $5 and said HBR Talk 386. The super chow from yesterday may have been for the episode discussing the results on a recent study that shows that women are more prone to supporting political violence. I don't know if that helps with the context. Thanks for the thought-provoking discussion. It does. And the thing is, it's relevant to what we're talking about here, because they didn't get a man to do this. They got a woman to do this. They got a woman to lure men from foreign countries to do what is essentially political violence, right? They're fighting with Ukraine over an area of the former Soviet Union that was part of Russia prior to the history of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was part of Russia originally. So this entire fight between them is really just over how much of the part of Russia that Ukraine used to be is going to be not part of Russia anymore. And the people in the part that is being fought over were Russian nationals that wanted to remain part of Russia. And
it's like if the southern border of Texas was taken over by Mexicans, and for some reason, if for some reason the U.S. Federation collapsed like the Soviet Union did, and the southern part of Texas and California and New Mexico were taken over by Mexico. Once that was pushed back on, it's like America trying to go, okay, can we take these bits back next? I know that's not.
It's almost more like if a group of a tribe of Native Americans took an area of the United States that most of the population was Native American there and said, we are going to form our own country here. Because historically, neither the nation of Mexico nor the nation of the United States have a claim to being the original makeup of that land. There isn't anything here that's quite the equivalent of the long-standing existence of a nation in that area. And if you wanted to go even farther back, you could even go to the people that were displaced by the Native Americans, except that they don't live in this part of the world anymore. They fled all the way to the southern tip of South America, to this little remote island, and they kill anybody that comes there that isn't part of their tribe. They learned. So in any case, yeah, there's it's kind of hard to pick a U.S. equivalent of this, but the bottom line is, it when it comes down to who's being asked to fight, and I use the term asked very, very, very ironically, since nobody's being asked on both sides. Everybody that's involved is getting conned or forced into it.
Pussy whipped would be a better verb in this case.
In this instance, yeah, in this case, it's definitely a good way to put it. But they're not fighting for something that history holds up, and they're not fighting for something that would be right, because of some wrongdoing. There hasn't been some crime that one side should be fighting against the other, but the other side shouldn't be. Honestly, both sides have had wrongdoing, and the United States has had wrongdoing. Remember, we had our President Obama committed a genocide in that part of Ukraine to stop the Russian nationals there from allowing Russia to annex that area. So there's no innocent aspect of this. Russia's not 100% right, and Ukraine's not 100% right. Everybody's wrong. When this war is over, nobody will have won the war. one side will have lost the war harder than the other. And that's all that's going to happen here. And that's what these men are being conned into and what the Ukrainian men are being forced into. And all of this blood, this spilled blood, these wasted lives, and these terrified young men who are being forced to fight against each other against their will, to kill each other against their will, they're all stuck in this situation because it is making money for money launderers in the US and in Ukraine and in Russia, for oligarchs. That is all this entire war is about. It's not about heritage. It's not about history. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about what the people of the nation want. It's not about who has a right to what. It's not about freedom. It's not about people protecting their homes. It's about making money for a bunch of money laundering, corrupt, bloodthirsty, callous, uncaring oligarchs. Everyone involved in this that isn't one of those people is lower than a pawn is in chess. In their minds. Every single one of them. Including this woman. They don't care about her either. If she is treated as a war criminal later on by some tribunal and they hang her, not one of those oligarchs on whose behalf she's acting will shed a single tear for her. They won't care. And they won't care about all the men that they got killed. She won't either. She'll cry over what's going to happen to her. But she won't give a rat's ass about those men. Domestically, Russia has expanded conscription, recruited prisoners, and offered increasingly generous sign-up bonuses to maintain its operation in Ukraine, despite substantial losses. And like I said, Ukraine's been doing exactly the same thing, plus they've been using bussification, which we saw a few weeks ago, where they're going out in public places and just randomly kidnapping and impressing men into the military. More than 1 million of its soldiers have been killed or wounded since the full-scale invasion in 2022, with 250,000 killed in the month of December 2025 alone, according to NATO. Research by BBC News Russian, based on obituaries and other publicly available death records, suggests Russian troop losses in Ukraine rose faster than ever last year. It is difficult to determine how many foreigners have joined Russia's military. BBC Russian analysis, which also looked at the number of foreigners killed and injured, suggests that at least 20,000 may have signed up, including from countries such as Cuba, Nepal, and North Korea. Just imagine, right? You get married and you have a kid, and your kid is your world, the most important person in your life. You do everything to make sure your child grows up well-educated, well-fed, cared for, nurtured, loved, provided for. You teach them right from wrong. You teach them smart from dumb as best you can. And your kid develops a moral outlook and looks around at the opportunities in your country and falls for some bullshit scam perpetrated by a woman in a foreign country. And she takes him to a nation where there's a war taking place, sends him into a war zone with essentially no training, and he dies. Like, I cannot imagine. These guys must be terrified that this has happened to. I mean, they expressed terror, but the families are going to grieve for the rest of their lives, and they're going to spend the whole rest of their lives wondering what the hell they did wrong that their sons ended up in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Can anyone tell me the population of Russia without looking it up? Bear in mind, it's the largest country in the world.
Land-wise, yes.
Land-wise, yes.
Land-wise, yes. The population is about 150 million at top estimates, which is less than half of the United States.
Yeah.
It's comparable to Germany, and yes, that's largely because most of it is frozen wasteland that can't house that many people. But even so, you'd think it would be larger than that. And it's not just because so much of it is inhabitable. It's because every time there's a war, the Russian solution to this war is to throw as many men as they possibly can into the meat grinder. When you look at the deaths in World War II, it was something like 25 million Russians died. I mean, even the German losses were only like 12 million or something like that. It was the same with the Napoleon War. It's the same with this war. Their solution to every war is it doesn't even fucking matter. Let's just kill as many of our men as we possibly can. It's like rich people solve every problem by throwing money at it. Russia solves every problem by throwing men at it, and eventually I would say they win. I mean, they win insofar as they have just enough men to be able to expend a few of them into the meat grinder. And I don't know how much longer they can do this, but that's what they keep doing, and that's still what we're
Going to
seeing
depend on how much longer they can get foreign men into their country and use them instead of their own men, or in addition to their own men. If there were no foreigners involved in the Russia-Ukraine war at all, it would have been over in a few months. Neither side would have been able to sustain this level of killing and death if they hadn't had other nations pushing it, other oligarchs in other nations pushing it, and if they hadn't been able to recruit mercenaries from other nations using lies, false promises, and propaganda, all which again are just different types of lies. It's not even like the world wars where at least there was a grain of truth in the propaganda that was used to get men to sign up. This is all straight up bullshit. It is all straight up bullshit. And I don't think they'd be able to get their own men to do this voluntarily, either nation. And I think they would run out of men that they could force into it if they didn't have this influx, this blood donation from other countries. We need to get men in nations that are not at war to become immune to the propaganda that convinces them to donate their blood to other nations' wars. So yeah, at least 20,000 may have signed up from a variety of nations. Ukraine has suffered significant troop losses too, and has also taken foreign fighters into its ranks. And this is the part where it's been dark. It gets darker here, and it's earlier aspects of this story were upsetting. This part is it really drives it home, in my opinion, what's going on here. Omar's first contact with Azarnyuk was when he was stranded with barely any money at a Moscow airport in March 2024, together with 14 other Syrians. So he was stuck at the airport already. He was not in a situation where he could say no. Jobs in Syria were scarce and low paid. Omar says a recruiter there had offered the men what they understood to be civilian work, guarding oil facilities in Russia, not military work. So what they were originally brought to Russia for wasn't even supposed to be military. They thought they were going to be security guards in a civilian area.
Wow.
Yeah. They flew to Moscow only to learn they had been scammed. And what ends up, when people are, well, why didn't they just go home? What ends up happening in a situation like that, if you have had a foreign business or a foreign national pay your way into a country, or you skimped and saved every penny you had to pay to fly to a foreign country, and you're expecting to earn money there and use it to pay your way back home, or you're expecting this scammer to pay your way back home, that means if you get there and it's a scam and you're not going to earn money and they're not going to pay your way back home, you have no way to get back home. So unless you go through whatever process it takes to get deported and sent home, you're screwed. And you don't know. Different countries may decide that you were trying to traffic drugs. The Russian court system isn't famous worldwide for being fair and lenient toward people that break laws in Russia. So these men may have been afraid that they were going to get jailed in Russia instead of sent home. If they went to somebody and said, hey, we were shipped here for jobs and the jobs aren't real and this was all a scam and it's not legal like we thought it was, what do we do? Is there a way for us to get home? They may be told, no, you're going to jail. You broke our laws. You immigrated illegally, right? The penalty, they could have even been told, you can't leave. The penalty for what you've done here is death. They may have been told something terrifying enough. If they don't speak Russian and they don't know enough about Russia, they may have reason to believe their lives were in danger if they went to the authorities. They may have had no papers. They may have had all kinds of issues keeping them from just going to the authorities for help. Right? So they find out they've been scammed and they're trapped in an airport. They searched online for options, maybe trying to find a way to pay their way home. Right? One of the group found as Narka's channels and messaged her, so she was easily found in a search for options, what to do in this situation. She met them at the airport within hours and took them by train to a recruitment center in Bryansk, where Western Russia, he says, where she offered them 1-year contracts with the Russian army, with a monthly salary equivalent to about $2,500 or £1,856, and a sign-up payment of $5,000. Sums they could only dream of in Syria. Actually, that would be not too bad for if you were, living in a poverty situation here. What she's offering would be an improvement if it were true, if it wasn't a scam. Omar says the contracts were in Russian, none of which the men understood, and she took their passports, promising to arrange Russian citizenship. This is the part that sounds familiar. Like, we know about somebody that was accused of that and was threatened with prosecution for it, became internationally famous as a human trafficker for that, but not for luring people to war, for allegedly luring people into a compound where they made social media videos that were illicit, right? That's it, essentially, for porn, to produce porn, which is a lot less fatal, usually, than going to the front lines in a war, and not nearly as scary as going to the front lines in a war. And if he had been found guilty of what he was accused of, he would have been found guilty of human trafficking and he would have been jailed for a very long time. He's hated all over the world, and in the UK, they're literally changing the curriculum of their schools to prevent little boys from idolizing this guy. But here is this woman doing it in Russia, and apparently the state is all on board with that. Right? Took their passports, promising to arrange Russian citizenship. She also promised they could avoid combat roles if they paid her $3,000 each from their sign-up payments. So now they're down to $2,000 remaining. And of course, the guys did that. But he says within about a month, he was on the front line with, he says, just 10 days training and no military experience. We're 100% going to die here, he says in one of his voice notes sent to the BBC investigative team. A lot of injuries, a lot of explosions, a lot of shelling. If you don't die from the explosion, you'll die from the debris landing on you, he says in May 2024. Dead bodies everywhere. I've stepped on dead bodies, God forgive me, he reports the following month. If someone dies, I've seen it with my own eyes. They put him in a rubbish bag and throw him next to a tree, he adds. After nearly a year... Wait, go ahead.
Thank you for not mentioning the guy who we won't mention, who's just employing women to be ethos. But I really have to push back on the comparison. Because
like, this is it. All that guy did.
These ethos are not doing... They're not having to step over dead bodies.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah, all he's accused of doing is, pushing women into being ethos. And of course, the allegations were contested by the alleged victims in that instance. Right? And the entire world is up in arms over that. This has been going on in Russia for like 3 years. And this is the first we've heard of it. And the BBC just reports it as a matter-of-fact thing. It's not getting the same attention from them, even though these men were conned into Russia and then kept there against their will and forced into a frontline combat zone where they are getting blown up, shot at, forced to watch their compatriots get blown up and shot at, and where several of them are dying, and those that survive are going to be traumatized for the rest of their lives. This is what causes PTSD in war. This environment. Every second of every minute of every hour of every day that this soldier and all of his compatriots spend in that environment, they have to be on high alert, in terror for their lives, while trying to manage the situation so that maybe they won't die. After nearly a year, he had discovered what he says Azarnyuk had failed to explain. A 2022 Russian decree essentially allows the military to extend soldiers' contracts automatically until the war ends. Meaning, as long as this conflict goes on, these men's 1-year contract can be stretched into years and years. If it goes on for a decade, they could be there for a decade. And we don't know what's going to happen to them when it's over. We don't know that they're going to be hailed as heroes for coming to fight there by Russia. They might be just treated as illegal immigrants. If they renew the contract, I'm screwed. Oh God, he says. And the next sentence is just his contract was continued, which means that at the end of his year, they kept him. They didn't let him go home. Azarniak's Telegram channel has 21,000 subscribers. Her posts have often told readers wanting to apply to join the Russian military to send her a scan of their passport. She has then posted invitation documents, sometimes with a list of names of the men they are for. The BBC has identified more than 490 such invitations that she has sent over the past year to men from countries including Yemen, Syria, Egypt, Morocco, Iraq, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria. Her posts have mentioned recruitment for an elite international battalion and made it clear that people in Russia illegally, including those whose visas have expired, are eligible.
What we're pointing to here is a vacuum cleaner for men. It's a poor analogy because vacuum cleaners just suck up everything. What we have here is a vacuum cleaner that only works on men, that just leaves women where they are to carry on existing in their own country, complaining about war and being all like, oh, this war is such a tragedy. Let's fight against this war by sending more men into the fucking vacuum cleaner. Meanwhile, the same thing is going on, and it's this is difficult to explain because women are always talking about, oh, you want to take us back into the 50s, you want to take us back hundreds of years, as meanwhile, the fucking war machine that keeps vacuuming up men has not changed. It's basically the same as it was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It's just there trying to resolve these hot shit political disputes that these world leaders have over whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just solving all their difficulties by sucking up men and then blowing them back out into the meat grinder and killing them. And the BBC is here going, oh yeah, look, this happens because of some e-thought that's doing this. No, bitch, e-thoughts are a problem, but they're a microscopic problem compared to what governments are doing, and they're a problem that's only existed in the last fucking 15 years or some shit. Yeah, no, guess who else has been doing this for fucking centuries? The British government. That thing that you've got fucking in your emblem up there, the BBC. It's just another arm of the British government, the same fucking British government that's been vacuuming up men and sending them to other countries to die for ages. And it's the same with every other country. Yeah, including Russia. The BBC is here going, look what internet personalities are doing in Russia, as if it only happens in Russia and it only happens on the internet. Motherfucker! Do you have any idea how many men have been sucked up by this vacuum? Not because of the internet and not because of foreign countries, but because
and as if it only happens in Russia makes me remember. Do you remember that that guy that got caught trying to put himself into position to shoot Trump at Mar-a-Lago?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what we found out he did as part of the CIA before that? Do you guys remember what his job was?
No, I don't.
This, but for Ukraine. And he's not female. He didn't burn people's passports, but he did recruit soldiers, mercenaries, to go fight in Ukraine from foreign nations, and may have been part of the recruiting mission that brought in the I believe it was Afghan terrorists or Iraqi terrorists that did the genocide on Obama's behalf against the Crimean Russian nationals that wanted to be annexed into Russia instead of staying as part of Ukraine. So, yeah, this isn't just done in one country or another. This is the United States has done this too. The difference is very, very minor. The thing that gets me about this is like the disproportionate level of outrage here. Like the BBC writes this one article, and that's it. That's all I've seen about this, right? Where when you had a guy using the same tactics, or at least accused of, because it was pretty well debunked that Tate was doing what he was accused of doing. But when people thought that he was luring women into Romania and then taking away their passports, not even burning them, just taking them away to impress them into pornography service, everyone in the world was all outraged, and there was this hue and cry for him to be jailed forever, get the death penalty, and there's a whole effort to in the education system to make sure young men don't listen to him, and he's the boogeyman of the feminist movement. And any time that you talk about fathers' custody rights or due process in criminal court, or boys' disadvantages boys are facing in education, well, Andrew Tate. They sound like, warped parrots. Like, that's all they can say. You talk about anything facing men. Men are committing suicide left and right. Andrew Tate. But I haven't heard anybody say anything about this. These men are being lured into a foreign country under the same pretenses. You're going to make money that you couldn't make in your home country. You might get citizenship in a country where you have better opportunities. Maybe you can bring your family here. You won't have to do anything horrific. And then, boom, they're sent to the front lines of a war where they're getting killed. Their passports are being taken away from them and burned to keep them from going home. They're being kept on a contract that if they violate it, they're deserters from the military. And I guarantee you, if you bring that up to these feminists that are all on about how the manosphere hates women and the manosphere is trying to take women back to the time of coverture and the false picture of coverture that feminists paint, their only response is going to be, Andrew Tate, and that's all you're going to get. They won't even care that not one of those women has been shot at, much less died. Nobody's had to step over dead bodies to get to their porn studios. And they are actually making the money they were promised. And they, of course, like I said, they came out and said, no, he didn't do that to us. Whoever told you that was full of shit. Whereas these men are complaining. The ones that are not dead are complaining.
At least they haven't appeared in a nightclub with Sneeko and Clavicula. Now that you've mentioned his name, I guess I'll go and address that thing that never really seemed like news. But I just want to be like, who the fuck is this Clavicula guy? He appeared on the scene like a month ago, and now all of a sudden he's in a nightclub with Nick Fuentes and Sneeko and the Tates, and now everyone's going, look how fucking cringe this is. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I'm glad you've pointed out how many of these people are just being sucked in.
Wait, because they went someplace?
Yeah,
that people go to on a regular basis? That's cringe.
It is, yes, because they were there with Clavicula. who is a
Who the
Mossad
fuck is that?
agent. Exactly.
Oh,
He appeared
Right.
on the scene a fucking month ago, bashing himself with a hammer and fucking looks maxing. Like, that's what everyone should do. And I'm like, it's, I can't remember the name of that guy whose house we went to in LA during VidCon 2017. But this guy,
yeah, I didn't get to be part of that. I was
this
working.
guy just, when someone appears on the scene out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's hanging around with the big shots, I'm like, that guy is sus. And I'm that
some
way with
some level of Fed or other
Mm.
governmental. Yeah,
Bunty
something.
King. His name was Bunty King.
Bunty. Oh my
Yeah,
God, I haven't heard that name in years.
exactly. He came out of nowhere. Then everyone on our scene was in his house, and then suddenly he was the guy. And it's the same thing going on with this clavicular guy, this looks maxing, hit himself with a hammer guy, and now all of a sudden, Nick Fuentes and Sneeko and the Tates are hanging around with him in a nightclub, and someone's posted all this shit about all this, and I'm like. And this is being posted as if to make them look cool, but everyone, literally everyone across the scene is like, "This is cringe. You guys are all dickheads." And now people are going, "Why? What? How the fuck did this happen shortly after clavicular became a thing?" And I'm with Goodfella on this. I'm with a number of other of us on this. Like, why? How is this happening just after this fucking rando clavicular came on the scene? And I think it's because clavicular is a fucking Mossad agent, and I'm just going to say that.
You know what? I don't. At this point, all of that. You know, the only reason that I
It's
made
got
the
nothing to do with the
comparison-
Russia thing. I know.
Well,
I just
the
wanted to
only
say that.
reason that I made this comparison is because the feminist establishment got all up in arms about the practice of allegedly, unproven by the way, practice of allegedly using confiscation of passports to prevent someone from escaping from what is essentially a form of slavery, being forced, into some type of labor, right? They got all up in arms about that when it wasn't proved. And in fact, the alleged victims were saying it wasn't happening. But I haven't heard a peep out of any of those people when it's proved it's actually being done. There's video showing it. The victims are complaining when they're not getting killed. And what they're being forced into isn't something that they could go to a therapist and recover from because they're getting killed. And there is no therapy that helps you to overcome death, like your own death, after it's happened. There's not some therapist, like maybe in the afterlife, there's an afterlife therapist that goes, okay, now you're in the afterlife, let's make peace with that. But certainly not here. You don't get to go back to your family and pick up where you left off, or at least try to. You don't get to do some talk show circuit and tell everybody how awful it was for you. You don't get any of that because you're dead. And I haven't heard a peep. Not one peep. Not one feminist. Not one mainstream establishment media outlet going, gosh, this is 10,000 times worse than what Andrew Tate was accused of. This is unbelievable. This woman is the devil. She's the worst person on earth. Look what she's doing to these young men. Nobody. Not one person.
Well, the BBC
I
is doing
think
it.
They won't.
Of all people, the BBC is doing it, but it's probably not.
Yeah, but they're not even. Their complaint isn't even that big. Like they're highlighting it, but they're not calling for the education system to make changes to the way little boys are taught so they don't fall for this shit, are they?
Indeed.
Right. So obviously, it's apparently a much bigger deal in the world. If you convince boys that women can be gullible and that there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of that gullibility, then it is to get them killed. That's like, this is why this pissed me off so much when I read it. I'm just, this is why I brought up Andrew Tate. Now, as far as this Bunnicula guy, sorry for the people who did not grow up in the United States. I can't hear this guy's name without thinking that name. I don't remember what you said his real name is, Mike, but there was a book series when I was growing. Caligula,
like collarbones. Clavicula.
Yeah,
like
your
Caligula, or
no, like clavicle, like your clavicle.
like clavicle. Okay,
Yeah,
it's like
collarbones.
collarbones. Okay, well, so there's a book series that I read when I was growing up about a vampire rabbit that sucked the juice out of vegetables. That it was just ridiculous and funny, and it was for kids. But yeah, the fact that his name ends in icula, I like every time Mike says his name, I get this mental image of Bunnicula the rabbit. Just couldn't help it. But yeah, none of that really matters to me. Like, I don't care who those guys hang around with. I don't care what they're doing.
As long as they're not getting men killed in their
Right.
fucking thousands, like whatever.
Right. Like, if they and I'm gonna be blunt. Women don't need some dipshit in Romania to convince them to get naked in front of a camera. Hundreds of girls are doing it for $6 a month on OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm.
Or for free. So, like, I just, yeah, no. The comparison, the point of the comparison was that it was so demonized when the alleged victims were women whose victim experience wasn't even anywhere near the level of what a forced soldier goes through. And yet, the more I read about this is just, nobody is stepping up to say anything about this in the establishment media. As outraged as they are over women in porn, they have no concern or consideration at all for men in trenches. So, her post had mentioned recruitment. Oh, I already read that part. We have spoken to 8 foreign fighters, including Omar, who were recruited by her, as well as the families of the 12 men who are missing or dead. Many felt Azarniak had misled or exploited recruits. You think? They told us the men knew they were joining the military but did not expect to serve on the front lines. Several, like Omar, felt they had inadequate training or thought they would be able to leave after a year. And I want to remind you, yeah, they knew after talking to her that they were joining the military, but these are men who were lured into the country on false pretenses of a non-military job that was yanked out from under them. And the only reason they even considered joining the military was out of desperation because of that circumstance.
Mm.
And this story doesn't present any evidence that scam is in any way unique and separate from her scam. They just don't provide any evidence that they're not in, or that they are in cahoots. So you don't know. It could be that was the setup, and then this was the hit. Right? This was the scam. It's very possible that these men were lured there by one branch of a scam and then pounced on by the other branch of it. We have no way of knowing. And Ty Preston 555 points out, do you really think that they even cared about the trafficked women? No, I don't. I don't care that they cared if those women were trafficked, which, again, it's pretty well been proved that they were not trafficked. But even if they had been, I don't think that that was what they cared about. They cared about using the Andrew Tate story to control young men. They had a thing, right? They want that anti-misogyny training in the schools so that they can use allegations of misogyny and fear of being accused of misogyny as a thought-terminating cliche to control young men. That's the only reason that the government even cares at all about the concept of misogyny, which, by the way, doesn't exist in the real world, or any other women's issue. They don't care about it because they care about women. They care about it because they can use it to control men.
These women are not even getting raped. And even if they were, I think men getting killed is worse than women getting raped. But again, these women aren't even getting raped. They're fucking ethotting themselves to the highest common denominator.
They're getting rich.
Men are getting killed. Hello. Is this thing on? Men are getting killed.
On the way there. They're getting tortured and killed. Emotionally tortured and killed. Imagine this is the last year of your life. What is happening to these men is the last year of your life. If you knew the day before that year started, what would you do? If you couldn't avoid it, right? Someone comes along and says, this is the trajectory of the last year of your life. You're going to go here, and you're going to be in fear for the whole last year of your life, and then you're going to get shot or exploded or poisoned or whatever. You're going to die, and it's going to be miserable and painful and cold and terrifying the whole time for the whole next year, and then you're going to die. What would you do? Right? Where if someone came along and said, you're going to make a couple $1 million, but you got to get naked in front of all the whole world for it. Anybody that wants to see. I don't think that I'd have the same reaction to the latter as the former.
And that's just a normal woman, like Hannah, who, yes, I can assure you is a woman. Hello, Twitter. I know it's been 0 days, but Hannah is a woman, and she's a normal woman. But let's
been 0 days.
let's consider the, I mean, literally millions of women who are like, oh hell yes, I will absolutely sell my body. I will, let alone sell pictures of my body, which is what the vast majority of these women are doing. They're just selling pictures of their body. And yeah, they'll be out of a job soon because of AI. But for now, all they're doing is selling pictures of their body. And yes, there are millions of women who will do that. They will even relinquish their passports so that they can do this because they make money doing this. We happen to live in an economy where that's the most lucrative way for women to make money, by just selling pictures of their bodies. And as much as I distrust AI in many ways, one reason I like it is that it's going to put these fucking ethos out of a job. That'll be the first sector of industry that is put out of a job. But
they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones going to be put out of a job. I couldn't sleep the other night because I'm usually awake at night. I work nights. And so I started screwing around with, there's this AI music thing called Suno. It's like sumo, like the wrestler, except with N as in Nancy instead of M as in Mary.
Yeah.
And I've screwed around with it before. I have made a few things for fun with it. And I actually had something come out of there that I might use for something. But this, I put in the term elevator and the term Muzak, and I was gonna write a description. I'm just curious, what'll it produce if I put in something just completely bizarre like this? And I hit enter without thinking about it, and I had my thumb came down on the keypad, the touchpad on my laptop. Well, the cursor was over the button and I was gonna do a next line, but it made 2 songs. And one of them sounds like almost everything on the radio, on pop radio today. And it took me 10 or 15 minutes to throw a bunch of images in with it and create what looks pretty much the same to me as the types of videos that you would see on MTV back in the day when they were still featuring music most of the time. I don't know what they have on now because I don't watch MTV anymore. But I think a lot of the shit pop that is really popular these days, that, the stuff they play 10 times a day on the radio and all that, that's going to be destroyed by AI because it's already, somebody pointed out, I posted it to X to see, what other people thought. Like, this is actually pretty normal sounding. One guy said, well, yeah, a lot of pop music is already pretty algorithmic. Did it shut down? Your local MTD mower says MTV shut down. Is it gone? Like, that doesn't surprise me. It was good when there was music, like Headbangers Ball was great. Downtown Julie Brown was great. Right? Back when there was decent music and stuff, but I'm not surprised. It went woke and then it went broke, I guess. But yeah, a lot of what these artists produce in terms of music videos, when they're not putting, like, the whole video is some weird demonic shit, it is usually a couple fighting and a bunch of video segments of a woman looking upset and falling down and being sad, and maybe some scene of her dancing. And so I just put a bunch of that stuff in together, and almost randomly, really, and it looked to me like any other music video. It didn't look any worse. So I think that's going to die. That profession is in deep doo-doo. It's going to be one of the first things to go before...
You know what AI music generators like Suno are not allowed to do? Copyrighted material. So if you want a medley of Elton John songs or a medley of David Bowie songs, I'm afraid AI is not going to be able to do it for you. You need to come to me.
That's
you need
right.
to come to Dr. fucking Random Account, because that's the only place you can get that kind of shit. I'm not going to be out of job for a long fucking time. Also, AI doesn't understand sarcasm. So it's never,
no, it does not.
It's not going to be able to generate sarcastic, satirical lyrics to those parody songs of copyrighted material. So yeah, you got to come to me if you want that kind of shit. That's good to know.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah. So yeah, AI. One of the things that AI won't do is it won't take over telling people the truth about what's going on in the world either. So this may become one of the few things that doesn't go away because of AI as well, because it's more likely to be used by government to lie to you. So yeah, many felt that she had misled or exploited the recruits. You think? Several, like Omar, felt they had inadequate training or thought they would be able to leave after a year. Here's another of her videos. In October 2024.
To all the people who say that I'm throwing people to death, thank you for the advertising. You all understood well that you were going to war. So why are you complaining? You thought you could get a...
So let's go back again, because what she said was, to all the people that say I am throwing people to death, thank you for the advertising. You all understood that you were going to war.
People to death, thank you for the advertising. You all understood well that you were going to war.
You all understood well that you were going to war. So remember, she promised them they wouldn't go to the front lines, and they're being sent to the front lines. She promised them they would receive training, and they did not receive training. So she says, you knew well that you were going to war. So what are you
why
complaining about?
You thought you could get a Russian passport and do nothing? And
You thought that you could get a Russian
Wow.
passport and do nothing?
Wow.
Going into a war zone is dangerous even if you're not on the front lines. Even if you were just going to guard an oil plant, right, or an oil refinery, guess what some of the targets were for bombing by Ukrainian forces in Russia? Take a wild little guess.
The Americans first.
Well, no, the Russian oil refineries.
Mm.
If you want your tanks to have fuel to use to get further into the country you're attacking, you need to be able to refine oil. So if the oil refineries get bombed, then you can't use the ones that are nearby. You have to use the ones that are on the other side of the country where the bombs aren't reaching in order to fuel your tanks, in order to get fuel to your tanks. So the refineries, the pipelines, the tanker trucks, right? Anything that transports fuel to allow the tanks to enter and do damage in the Ukraine area, the Ukraine front, that's a target. So if these guys were going to be guarding these refineries, they would still be targeted. They just wouldn't be the ones holding guns on the front lines, riding in the tanks, and so on. But yeah. Oh, you knew nothing. Like, you were going to do nothing. When she did tell them they were going to have military training and go to war.
lie in a 5-star hotel? This does not happen, guys. Nothing happens.
So now she's talking to them as if they were not made promises that were not kept, and that they expected to stay in a 5-star hotel and do nothing the whole time. Like, well, I didn't give you what I promised you, but your expectations were ridiculous. And to bring the point home, I'm going to make up a set of expectations that you never expressed.
Yeah. I'm of two minds about this. I hate the fact that men are just throwing their lives away based on this just ridiculous premise that they're going to do something good. I'm also of the same mind that if you're stupid enough to fall for this, I don't know how much sympathy I can have. I do have sympathy. I don't want to see these young men going and giving away their lives. But if this is the reason that you're doing it and you think that this is justified, I mean, okay, but well, then you FAFO, you win the stupid prize. I'm not.
If they were raised in an environment where they had a lot of other options and they chose this instead, I'd agree.
Yeah,
But
it's gonna kill the stupid men, but it's not gonna kill the stupid women, and that's gonna leave a bunch of stupid women left behind, and that's still gonna affect the.
And they're going to be raising the children.
The genetic pool, yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, these men aren't, just some guy off the street. Like it, your neighbors are probably not going to fall for this. The guys that live next door to you in your apartment complex are probably not going to fall for this. Because they're not in a situation where they can't go do something else and do just as well financially as these guys were promised, right? They would have every opportunity to earn that much money from just a regular job here in the United States. Right? You go to a country like Syria that is already war torn, where there is already violence. They're living in poverty, and they're living in very difficult conditions. Besides that, that great danger and so on. In addition to not having the financial advantages that they should be having, it's a whole different story. People like to conflate being desperate with being dumb. The men that are falling for this are often men who don't have much to lose. They're gonna see their families die. They're gonna starve to death. Just like, do you remember that episode that South Park made about Somalian pirates, where the South Park kids were like all idolizing pirates, thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean, and they were they were trying to play pirate, and they went to Somalia, and one of the first things that they ran into is a pirate who went into piracy because he needed money because his sister is dying of AIDS. Like, totally different from what the expectations they had were, and everything. Like, that's the difference between, people who fall for, like, the Nigerian scams, email scams. Send me your bank account and I will info, and I will send you all this money that I have no other way of getting out of the country, and then you can keep some of it, and I will come for the rest, or whatever the scams are. Like, they're not, senile little old ladies in the first world countries whose kids aren't watching out for them enough, or who, had a lifetime of should know better and are now senile and falling for shit like that. These are guys that in their home countries, there's not enough food for their family. And they maybe are getting shot at already anyway. Maybe they've been in the military already. Maybe they've had, someone in their family has died from horrible disease, and they're desperate for money. They're desperate for anything to improve their situation. So yeah, and a lot of them are low IQ, right? And some of the places that were mentioned on the list, there's a lot of inbreeding. So there's also quite a bit of intellectual disability, right? And so I don't view this the same as I view, like, some ordinary person coming in and being like, I gotta buy a green dot card to send to pay the taxes on the Mercedes that I just won from this Nigerian prince. It's not the same. It's really not the same. And it doesn't matter whose fault the conditions they're facing are at that point. Like, obviously it matters if you're trying to solve the problem, and it matters if you're looking for someone to punish for the problem. But when it comes to what they're going to try to do to get out of that situation, they don't care if it's the fault of their own government, their own people, their neighbors, whatever. They just care about getting enough money to feed their family. And so it's a whole different ballgame there. But
I mean, maybe Africa could solve this problem because it's so huge and it has every possible biome on the planet, with the exception of tundra. Like, they have jungles in the Congo. They have deserts in the northern area. They have everything in between. Like, if they could come together in some kind of federal government, like what the USA did. I mean, the USA
they have.
Yeah, the USA has, like, low IQ populations all over the place, but they're able to sort of homogenize this because they're largely ethnically homogenous in the first place, and largely culturally homogenous in the first place. This is the difference between America and Europe. America was built philosophically, whereas Europe was built ethnically. Like Europe has this whole bunch of different countries that have been separating themselves for thousands of years, whereas America is essentially, it's as close as you can get to one cultural homogeneity. And so when there's a natural disaster in the Appalachians or a natural disaster in Louisiana, you all can come together and solve that problem because you have a federal conglomeration of people who can come together and give to those who need it, at the expense of those who don't necessarily need it at the time.
Actually, most of what gets done in the United States under those circumstances, I hate to say it, I don't really hate to say it because it's an I told you so, especially in the last 10 years, has been not done by the federal government. Like the federal government hasn't really, even FEMA, hasn't really been like the go-getter in terms of helping the public after natural disasters that say the Cajun Navy, which is not a government organization, did. Like, there's a bunch of men with boats that went in and rescued people. Literally just civilians with boats, right? And, if you want something more organized, you have the Red Cross and the Salvation Army going in. And of the two, the Salvation Army, which is, I would say, slightly more church-run than the Red Cross is, they end up being relied upon quite a bit more than any government organization. And, depending on the circumstance, you have one or the other of them dominating the effort at rescue and recovery, even in circumstances where the disaster isn't that big. Like, there was a fire in the building behind mine in my apartment complex, and 2 apartments were completely destroyed. The fire burned the inside, didn't really burn as much of the outside of the building, but the people in those apartments lost everything. Like, there wasn't, it was all ash, it was all destroyed, and they didn't have any place to go. And I went over, the one guy, his friends had already come to pick him up. But the other lady, I asked if she needed a place to stay until, she found a place. And the Red Cross had already found her a place. Like, the fire wasn't out yet, and the Red Cross had already found her a place. So, it's really not so much the federal government that saves. It's a completely different thing. People talk about the American melting pot in a way that I think is wrong. We're more like, like your kitchen has that drawer where if you find something and you know that sometimes you really need it, so you don't want to throw it out, but right now is not one of those times, so you need to put it away because you got to have it somewhere that it's not in the way of the things you need right now. And you stick it in a drawer, and that drawer is full of that kind of stuff. And anytime you need something and you can't find it, you go look in that drawer, because inevitably, if it's smaller than that drawer, it's probably in that drawer. It's the magic drawer that holds all things you need until you need them. And we call it a junk drawer, but none of the things in it are junk. They're all actually very important things, but the reason they're important isn't happening right now. That's America. And whenever whenever something goes wrong, whenever something bad happens, whenever there's something to fix or something to clean up or people in need and that there are things that they don't have anymore or things they didn't need before that they need now. We go into the American junk drawer of skills and knowledge and possessions, property, extra things people have, extra money people might have that they just put away until it was needed. And we find what we need in the people of the country. And it's almost always civilians, right? And it's even our military is made up of civilians who volunteer to essentially be in training and on hold for those times. So you can think of America as the world's junk drawer that is full of things that you think of as junk in the moment, but when you need it, it's a treasure. I guess that's a weird analogy, but it's not because we have a centralized federal government. We organize. What we have in the United States is a spirit of if shit needs done, and you have the capability and the knowledge and the resources to contribute to getting it done, then you do it. You pick up a shovel. You get up and go and help. I don't think you can translate that into federal government, and I don't think you can export that to other countries unless the people there are willing to do the same.
It could have been done with Africa.
Yeah, Africans can do that.
Like we did it with America. Alas, Africa is populated by people who keep saying, "Get the fuck out." Much like Minneapolis is populated by people who, whenever you try and help them, they go, "Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out, bitch!"
Yeah.
And we tried. Those of us in Europe, I say those of us, we didn't do shit. But I mean, people in history.
But your ancestors did
try to help Africa in the way we helped America, because America was full of natives who sort of moved on to the sidelines and went, okay, I guess you can do better with the land than we did.
Well, they didn't just move to the sidelines; they married our ancestors and had children with them.
Well, indeed, and the same thing could have been done with Africa, but because we've been so afraid of being called racist, the natives have gone, no, get the fuck out. You are gay. You are gay.
Yep. Fake and gay.
And so they're like, no, get out. We can run this country by ourselves. And then we got the fuck out and let them deal with these countries by themselves. And it's not gone quite so well.
And now they have pirates whose sisters are dying of AIDS.
Indeed.
But yeah, to go on with this, Richard Bier gave us $5 and said some time ago there used to be reports out of either the UAE or Qatar where construction workers were recruited for projects, and upon arrival, they would have their passports confiscated and found themselves working for a less than promised wage. The wages were practically a pittance. This is a common scam, by the way. Trafficking that takes place here in the U.S., where people end up being a live-in maid against their will, or a live-in worker like roofer against their will in an apartment complex, or things like that, doing construction work, any kind of slavery that is imposed, and it's the easiest way to enslave someone is to pay them less than they need to live on, and charge them more than they could pay you, and remind them that they owe you a debt and they can't leave until they pay it off. Make it impossible for them to do that. It's a combination of usury and scam artistry, which usury is also scam artistry. and that gets done all the time here. And when there's a bust, somebody gets released, somebody gets rescued from that situation, you always find out that the person who recruited them promised them something like that, where they'd be earning more money, they'd have money they could send home, they'd be getting American citizenship and all manner of other things, and then they found themselves locked in a room in some rich person's home doing work as a maid, cleaning house and taking care of the children, and not allowed to leave, and having their passport, confiscated, all their paperwork confiscated, getting told they would go to jail here in the U.S. if they were caught by immigration, so they wouldn't go and tell anybody what was happening to them and try to get away from their captors. And it's the people who do that are the same people who make out like they are all for, illegal immigration because they care so much about the immigrants. And these people just want to have better lives. And this is a way for them to have better lives, when in reality, it just facilitates the ability of these wealthy oligarchs to keep slaves in their home to work against their will until they die. And then they're easy to get rid of because they're here illegally. Nobody knows where they've been living. Nobody knows who they're with, and nobody knows who did that to them. So what these soldiers are going through is not an unusual scam. It's a widespread and unfortunately highly, highly successful one. It's just that in this instance, instead of cleaning people's toilets, they're going to war. In Egypt, Yosef, whose name we've also changed, told the BBC, so they gave him a fake name, but they picked one that if your main language is, if your first language or only language is English, you might have a slight difficulty knowing if you're pronouncing it correctly or not, of course. Told the BBC his older brother, Mohammed, began a university course in Yekaterinburg in Russia in 2022, but he struggled to pay his fees, Yosef says, and he told his family a Russian woman named Polina had begun offering him help online, including work with the Russian military, that he believed would allow him to continue his studies. Right, so this is actually, again, this guy's actually going to university in Russia already, so he was there for a legitimate purpose. Probably was not there illegally. He was probably there on some kind of special dispensation, a visa for obtaining an education at a university there, attending university there, which we do here in the U.S. too. I actually went to school with a young lady from Russia who was here on that type of visa to study at my university when I was in school. That would have been in the 90s, early 90s. But in any case, he struggled to pay his fees. Told his family a Russian woman named Polina had begun offering him help online, including work with the Russian military that he believed would allow him to continue his studies. Every Gen Xer that knows what happened to the guys that enlisted in the military in the 80s and 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, to get their schooling paid for. Yeah. They all ended up going to Iraq or Afghanistan. Same thing.
Jesus. By the way, Yusuf means Jesus for what it's worth. I don't know if that's what
interesting.
Yeah.
You would think it would mean Joseph.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeshua means Jesus.
Yeah, Yeshua means, that makes sense. She promised him housing and citizenship, monthly expenses. Suddenly he was sent to Ukraine, found himself fighting. His last call was on January 24th, 2024, Yusuf says. About a year later, Yusuf says a message arrived on Telegram from a Russian number containing images of Muhammad's body. The family eventually learned he had been killed almost a year earlier. So it took them a year to even notify his family that he was gone. Azarnyuk became one of the most important recruiters for Russia's army, says Habib, another Syrian who has served in Russia's military. He was willing to be filmed, but spoke under a pseudonym for fear of repercussions. Habib says he and Azarnyuk worked together for around 3 years on visa invitations to Russia. He gave no further details, and we've not been able to confirm his role in the process. An image from social media in 2024 shows him alongside her. Azarnyuk, who is from Russia's southwestern Voronezh, I hope I'm pronouncing that probably Voronezh or something like that region, ran a Facebook group helping Arab students come to Moscow to study before starting her Telegram channel in 2024. I have the Super Chows open on a web page instead of in my Discord, because I've got our chat open in the Discord, and I keep hearing messages. I'm in a lot of Discords, so hopefully those noises aren't going out over the show. But I just muted it, so that should stop. Habib told the BBC Polina would take them in knowing that they were going to die. So she knew full well what she was doing. She knew she was recruiting men to go and fight and die on the Russian front lines. She knew she was lying to them. She knew they were not going to get the rewards that she was promising. And she knew that they wouldn't have signed up for what was going to happen to them if she had told them, this is what you're signing up for. Habib says most foreign recruits arrived expecting roles securing facilities or standing at checkpoints. The Arabs who are coming are dying immediately. Some people lost their minds. It's hard to see dead bodies, he says. Habib says he met Omar and the group of Syrians at a military training site. She had promised them citizenship, good salaries, and that they'd be safe, Habib says. But once you sign a contract here, there's no way to leave. Now, doesn't that sound like slavery? None of them knew how to use a weapon. Even if they were shot at, they would choose not to shoot back. If you don't shoot, you will be killed, he says. Polina would take them in knowing that they were going to die. He says she received $300 or 223 pounds from the army for every person she recruited. So essentially, she was selling men to their deaths for $300 a head. The BBC could not confirm this, although other recruits also told us they believed she received payment. Azarnyuk's posts from mid-2024 began to note that recruits will be participating in the hostilities and mention foreign fighters who have died in combat. You all understood that you were going to war, she says in one video in October 2024. You thought that you could get a Russian passport, do nothing, and live in a 5-star hotel. Nothing happens for free. We showed that in that video. In another case in 2024, the BBC has heard a voice message sent by Azarnyuk to a mother whose son was serving in the military. Azarnyuk says the woman has published something horrible about the Russian army. Using expletives, she threatens the son's life and warns the woman, I'll find you and all your children.
Fuck.
Imagine if your son's in a foreign country and he's had something done to him. He's been taking advantage of him by the military of that country, by the government of that country. They've done something awful to him, and you're afraid that he's not going to come back alive. And when you complain about it, when you show that you're upset that that's being done to your family, someone calls you up and threatens not only his life, but to find your other kids and go after them too.
This is something to be said for the nothing ever happens crowd, which is quite a substantial crowd of people who will say, yeah, no, nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. And to a degree, you're right. The truth is, nothing ever happens for free. Stuff happens all the time, and it costs you a little bit at first, and then a little bit more at second, and then even more at third. And it feels like nothing is happening, but stuff is happening over and over again, and it costs you a little bit more every time. That's the Overton window for you. It proceeds one small step at a time. And before you know it, it's costing you billions, where once upon a time it merely cost you pennies.
Yep.
And yeah, here we are.
Yep, and that's where we are. The BBC made multiple attempts to contact Zarnak. Initially, she said she would do an interview with us if we traveled to Russia. You couldn't pay me enough to travel to Russia, knowing what's going on there. But the BBC declined for safety reasons. Later, when asked in a voice call about claims that recruits were promised non-combat roles, she hung up. In voice notes sent afterwards, she said our work was not professional and warned of potential defamation proceedings. She also said our respected Arabs can stick their accusations up their arses. So, she's mad because people are talking about what she did. That's the upshot of this. She's mad because her practice is being exposed. The BBC contacted the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense for comment, but received no response. Now, if this was not happening and they could prove this was not happening, this woman wasn't doing what she was being accused of doing, the first thing they would want to do, because they don't want the bad PR all over the world, they don't want the people of foreign countries to be okay with their governments fighting against Russia in this war, they would put that proof out there. This is bullshit. This isn't even happening. This is all made up. Here's the evidence. Right? And that's what they would do. They didn't. They gave no comments, no response, no nothing. Nobody answered the BBC. And that should tell you that at least there is something going on here. Although a lot of what's being reported here, there's biases behind the why of it. The what of it is at least factual. This is happening. Previously, in March 2022, President Putin backed the recruitment of men from the Middle East, insisting they were ideologically not financially driven. There are people who want to come voluntarily, especially not for money, and provide assistance to people. Yes, those nice, friendly, charitable, with their lives, by the way, Arab men who just want to fight and die in foreign wars out of the goodness of their hearts. I've met thousands of them, right? Are there men anywhere in the world who really think that way? Are there men anywhere in the world who are so dumb that they just want to go fight and die in foreign wars for no benefit to themselves whatsoever because they think it's the right thing to do. Because I don't think that that's very common. Even if it was common in history, which I'm not sure it ever was, it doesn't seem to me like it's a common thing now. Journalists and researchers following the issue say individuals like Azarniak are part of a web of informal recruiters. The BBC has found 2 other Telegram accounts in Arabic making similar offers for joining Russia's military. One includes posts showing invitation documents and lists of names. The other has advertised large sign-up payments for joining an, quote, elite battalion. In September, Kenyan police said they had broken up suspected trafficking syndicate that they said was luring Kenyans with job offers but sending them to fight in Ukraine. Job offers meaning, oh, you're going to be going to do construction of homes in this area, but then when you get there, they send you off to war instead. Right? Katerina Stepenko, a research fellow at the Institute for the Study of War, told the BBC some municipal and regional authorities in Russia have been offering cash incentives of up to $4,000 or £2,970 to individuals such as HR professionals and local residents who recruit Russians or foreigners into military service. Those HR professionals that have that feminist training. She says the Kremlin initially used larger entities such as the Wagner private military group and prison system for recruitment, but since 2024 has also been leveraging locals and smaller companies. This suggests to me that those earlier versions of recruitment are no longer generating the same number of recruits, she adds. Meanwhile, Habib is now back in Syria after he says having bribed several commanders to terminate his contract. Omar eventually received Russian citizenship and has also managed to return to Syria. 2 of the Syrians he served with are dead, according to their families. Azarniak sees us as numbers or money. She doesn't see us as people, he says. We won't forgive her for what she did to us. And that's the end of the story. And it is 9 o'clock. So I guess the thing that I will say about this is that last line is the biggest deal. Not the part about forgiveness, but about she doesn't see us as people. That is the biggest problem. They are able to do this to men because the people involved don't see them as people. They see them as numbers. They see them as cannon fodder. They see them as trigger fingers. They see them as boots on the ground. But they don't see them as people. And this type of event, this type of warmongering where there's no win condition, only a lose condition and a bigger lose condition, that's going to continue. And this kind of scam artistry is going to be included in it forever until we start seeing men as people. Until we start getting at least as outraged and as motivated to do something about it. When men are getting scammed into going to the front lines of a war zone and fighting and dying for a cause that isn't even theirs. As we are, as the public is, as the law enforcement is, as the education system is, as the mainstream media is, when they're told that some guy might be, maybe possibly tricking some women into making porn that they were already going to make, but with him getting a cut.
And do consider what the geopolitical situation would be like if we did indeed enact the feminist dream of women being in charge of every country. we covered this in the first story on Tuesday, and Alison and Brian covered it yesterday. This idea that women are, and to broaden it out, women are broadly more vengeant when it comes to their own allies than men are when it comes to their own opponents. And if we ever did have a situation in which women are in charge of various countries, just think what that would be like.
Yeah.
Given what men do to other men, despite the lackluster empathy they have for other men, women have even less empathy for other men. The things women will do to men is barely describable. If we even have a concept of evil, it has not even been encountered in history. I mean, in some cases, maybe it barely has scratched the surface. But if we let feminists do what they want, and we let feminists put women in charge of every country, but they're still able to send men to their deaths in the same way that men have been able to send men to their deaths. Like, is anyone still laboring under any delusion that that would be even worse? If women can send men to their deaths without ever sending women to their deaths in the same way, like, regardless of what weapons of war we have to use, whether it's nuclear weapons or just fucking spears, women will send men to do all manner of things, even if it's under what we call a patriarchy, even if it's under any of these fucking societies that feminists like to call patriarchies. At least these wars will be sent to happen with certain rules. That's how we got the Geneva Convention, because men are in charge of these rules that wars are supposed to have. But if we leave women in charge, I mean, what we've covered tonight in this story is an example of what could happen, even if just some ethot is given charge of a small battalion of men. Imagine if a woman was in charge of an entire army of men. Imagine if every country was under the charge of women.
Yeah.
I would give it, I'm thinking 15 years before everyone was dead. And I mean, I say this as a hypothesis, but yeah, we might be about to see this hypothesis translated into a reality. I mean, arguably, we're kind of 100 years into it, aren't we?
Yeah. To a degree, yeah, because you don't need a female leader to have the consequences of women being in charge. All you need is female voters. All you need is a female voting bloc that is more unified than the male voting bloc. And that's what we've had for the last, well, for longer than Gen X has existed in the United States. From the time of our parents. Yeah. From the time of our parents, the female voting bloc has been more unified than the male voting bloc. And before women could vote, you still had politicians that had to appeal to women in order to get into office and stay in office. Woodrow Wilson was considered the women's president, right? Not because women could vote for him, but because he won the votes of the husbands by appealing to their wives. And that's a reality that's existed for a long time. Before we had the secret ballot, we talked about in one of the old HBR Talk episodes the last couple of years how suffrage evolved. And there was a time when, yes, you had to be a property owner and a taxpayer to vote, which meant that primarily only men could vote, but not entirely only men. There were women voters in the UK during that time. But the other thing was you didn't vote in secret. There was no secret ballot. You went up on display on a platform in front of other people, and you held up a colored card that showed what you were voting, what your vote was. So everybody, all of your neighbors, knew how you voted. And whether they agreed or disagreed with your vote would become a subject of contention between you and your neighbors. And if you were a married man and you had that access and your wife didn't, and you were voting, because only one vote per household was allowed, and she didn't like the way you voted, you heard about it because she knew. And remember during the Biden administration, the Democrats put out these ads, your husband doesn't have to know how you voted. But back when women couldn't vote, the husband had to vote in public, and the wife certainly knew how he voted. So politics have been run by women for a lot longer than people think. And as a result, we have ended up with these oligarchs that promise, they do the same thing in a way that these scam artists do. They promise safety. They promise safety nets. They promise conditions that women think they want. We won't let people do bad things in your community, right? We won't let your landlord treat you unfairly. We won't let the grocery store treat you unfairly. We'll make sure you get yours, and they have to work for theirs. And then women will vote for that. And the next thing you know, the economy is tanked. Their husband is in jail for something that he said in public that people disagreed with. Their prices for everything that they want to buy goes up, and so on. You can't travel because some law says you can't work in you can't move to a different neighborhood to do work. Right? Just all kinds of changes have taken place as a result of that, and getting women out of the business of voting would be a first step. Keeping women out of office is another important step. But until you take the gynocentrism out of politics entirely, it won't matter. You'll still have shit like this happening as a result of women having a lot more control over politics than they admit.
Amen.
And with that, we are going to end the show. Now that you're aware, both Russia and Ukraine are lying to men to get them to the front lines, or using other abusive forms of forcing them to fight against their will. And no matter what side you pick, if you pick a side in that war, the best outcome could be possible. That could be possible would be if your country stays out of it, and neither side gets a leg up, and they both decide that it's not worth fighting anymore. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts for going through this horrible information with me. Thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen, and good night all.
Men's rights activists are machines. dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.